Easter. It's a time of rebirth, of pastel colors, chocolate bunnies, and the joyful shouts of children on an egg hunt. It's supposed to be a symbol of hope, a bright Sunday morning that washes away the darkness. But for some, the brightest days cast the longest, most terrifying shadows. The stories you're about to hear aren't about mythical monsters or ghostly apparitions. They are far more frightening because they are real. These are stories of when the sacred family holiday was desecrated by unimaginable violence and baffling mystery. We're going to peel back the brightly colored foil to uncover 3 cases of true Easter horror that prove darkness doesn't take a holiday. Hello and welcome. Today, we delve into events that forever stained the Easter holiday for 3 different families in 3 different decades. We will journey from a seemingly normal family home in Ohio to a remote cabin in the California woods, and finally, to a lonely stretch of highway in Oregon. Each story is a chilling reminder that the capacity for human darkness is always present, lurking just beneath the surface of our most cherished traditions. So, settle in as we begin with a massacre that took place in the heart of a family home. Our first story takes us to Hamilton, Ohio, on Easter Sunday, March 30th, 1975. At 635 Minor Avenue, Alma Ruppert, a 66-year-old mother, was preparing a festive lunch. Her house was full. Her 2 sons, Leonard Jr. and James, were there. Her daughter, Alma Jr., was there with her husband, John, and their 8 children, ranging in age from 4 to 17. 11 members of the Ruppert family gathered to celebrate the holiday. It should have been a day of warmth and laughter. But one person in that house was not feeling festive. That person was 41-year-old James Ruppert. James was the quiet one, the black sheep. He was unemployed, in debt, and lived with his mother. He felt she favored his brother, Leonard. He was resentful that his sister had a large, successful family while he had, in his own mind, nothing. His mother had been nagging him about his joblessness and his drinking. These were resentments that had been simmering for years, like a pot left on a low boil. On that Easter Sunday, the pot boiled over. While his nieces and nephews were likely hunting for Easter eggs in the yard, James was upstairs. He wasn't hiding eggs. He was loading weapons. He owned a small arsenal, and he methodically loaded a .357 Magnum, a .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle, and 2 other pistols. He came downstairs. His brother, Leonard, was in the kitchen with their mother. James shot Leonard first in the head. He then shot his mother as she turned towards the sound. He moved into the living room, where his sister-in-law, Charity, and his brother's wife was. He shot her. Then, he began to hunt the rest of his family through the small house. His sister, Alma Jr., and her husband, John, were shot next. What followed was a systematic execution of his 8 nieces and nephews: David, Teresa, Carol, Anne, Leonard III, Michael, Thomas, and John Jr. No one was spared. From the 17-year-old to the 4-year-old. In the space of about 5 minutes, James Ruppert fired over 30 rounds and turned his family's Easter celebration into a slaughterhouse. When the house fell silent, James did something truly bizarre. He didn't flee. He didn't hide. He calmly arranged the guns, then called the police. His words to the dispatcher were chillingly nonchalant. "There's been a shooting here." When police arrived, they found a scene of absolute devastation. It was one of the most horrific, disturbing crimes the state of Ohio had ever witnessed. James' initial claim was that he'd blacked out, that he couldn't remember anything. But the evidence was overwhelming. The motive, the prosecution argued, was a toxic cocktail of greed and resentment. He wanted his mother's inheritance and was consumed by jealousy. He was eventually found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder for his mother and brother, and 9 counts of a lesser murder charge for the rest of his family. He was sentenced to life in prison, where he died in 2022. The house on Minor Avenue was demolished, but the memory of what happened there on that bright Easter Sunday serves as a horrifying testament to how quickly family celebration can curdle into bloodshed. The horror of the rubber case lies in its brutal, cold-hearted certainty. We know who did it, and we have a grasp on why. But our next story is, in some ways, even more terrifying, because it takes us deep into the woods, to a crime so savage and so strange that over 4 decades later, it remains one of America's most haunting unsolved mysteries. Welcome to Keddie, California, or what's left of it. In 1981, it was a remote, struggling resort town in the Sierra Nevada mountains. A place you go to get away from it all. For the Sharp family, it was supposed to be a safe haven. 36-year-old Glenna, Sue Sharp had rented cabin 28 to escape an abusive relationship and make a fresh start with her 5 children. The date was April 11, 1981, the Saturday before Easter. That evening, Sue was home with her 2 youngest sons, Greg and Rick, and their friend, Justin. Her oldest son, 15-year-old John, and his friend, 17-year-old Dana Wingate, were also there. The oldest daughter, 14-year-old Sheila, was spending the night at a neighbor's cabin, just a short walk away. The youngest daughter, 12-year-old Tina, was also believed to be at the sleepover, but for reasons we'll get to, she decided to come home that night. The next morning, Easter Sunday, Sheila returned home around 7:45 a.m. She opened the door to cabin 28 and walked into a living nightmare. The scene she discovered was one of almost incomprehensible brutality. Her mother, Sue, her brother, John, and his friend, Dana, were lying on the living room floor. They had been bound with electrical wire and medical tape. They had been beaten with a hammer and stabbed repeatedly. A steak knife was found bent at a 30-degree angle from the force of the attack. A hammer and an empty pellet gun rifle were also found at the scene. Blood was everywhere. It was a scene of pure, unrestrained rage. But the horror was compounded by the mystery. In the adjacent bedroom, the 2 youngest boys, Rick and Greg, and their friend Justin, were physically unharmed. They had slept through the entire, savage ordeal, or were so terrified they didn't make a sound. And most disturbingly, the youngest daughter, 12-year-old Tina Sharp, was gone. She had vanished. The investigation that followed was, by nearly all accounts, a masterclass in failure. The Plumas County Sheriff's Department was small and ill-equipped for a crime of this magnitude. The crime scene was contaminated. A potential key piece of evidence, a bloody hammer, was initially overlooked and then taken by the sheriff himself, only to disappear for years. The focus of the investigation seemed scattered. The main suspects were 2 men who lived in a nearby cabin, Marty Smart and his friend, John Bo Bubede, a known ex-convict from Chicago. Marty's own wife told police she believed he was involved. She claimed that on the night of the murders, Marty and Bo had been burning something in their wood stove in the middle of the night. A composite sketch of a man seen near the cabin looked suspiciously like Marty, but he was questioned and, unbelievably, let go. He left town shortly after. Bubede died a few years later. Marty Smart died in 2000, taking any secrets he had to the grave. The story gets even more tragic. 3 years later, in 1984, a man collecting bottles about 30 miles from Keddie found a partial human skull and a jawbone. It was identified through dental records as belonging to the missing girl, Tina Sharp. An anonymous call to the sheriff's department claimed the skull had been placed there, suggesting the killer or someone who knew them was still in the area, still watching. To this day, the Keddie cabin murders remain officially unsolved. Was it a drug deal gone wrong? A crime of passion? Or a random act of savagery? The unanswered questions. The image of those 3 small boys sleeping soundly next to a room of such carnage, and the ghost of little Tina Sharp make this a true Easter horror that continues to haunt those woods. The horror of Keddie is in its brutal, unanswered violence. But sometimes, the most disturbing stories are the quietest. They lack blood and brutality, but they are filled with a different kind of dread. The terror of the unknown, the chilling silence of a person simply ceasing to be. Our final story is one such case. On Easter Sunday, 2006, 74-year-old Marvin Clark was getting ready for a short road trip. He was a great-grandfather living in Tigard, Oregon. His plan for the day was simple and heartwarming. Drive about 70 miles east, across the Cascade Mountains, to the town of Defer to visit his great-grandchildren. He just had a phone call with his daughter, and everything seemed perfectly normal. He got into his distinctive red 1986 Ford Ranger pickup truck and drove away. He was never seen again. He didn't make it to his daughter's house. He never called. When he didn't show up, his family grew worried. They reported him missing, and the search began. Police and volunteers scoured the route he would have taken, Highway 26. It's a well-traveled road, but one that winds through the dense and rugged terrain of the Mount Hood National Forest. The search turned up nothing. Not a single trace of Marvin Clark or his red Ford Ranger. Think about that for a moment. It's one thing for a person to disappear. It's another thing entirely for a person and their vehicle to vanish from a major highway on a holiday weekend, a time when plenty of other travelers would have been on the road. The theories were numerous, but none held water. Did he have a medical emergency, like a stroke, and crash his truck somewhere off the road? It's possible, but the search was extensive. Over the years, countless search parties have combed the ravines and forests along that route. His truck, a large, bright red pickup, was never found. It's hard to believe it could remain hidden for so long. Could it have been foul play? Was he the victim of a carjacking? Again, it's possible, but there was no activity on his credit cards, no withdrawals from his bank account, no ransom call, nothing to suggest a crime for financial gain. If someone did harm him, they went to extraordinary lengths to hide both him and his entire vehicle without leaving a single clue behind. There was one strange detail. A few days after he vanished, his family received a bizarre, rambling letter in the mail. It was a typed, religious-themed letter that mentioned Marvin by name, but it offered no real information and was ultimately dismissed by investigators as likely being from a well-meaning but misguided person. It was just another dead end in a case full of them. Marvin Clark wasn't a man with enemies. He was a retired postal worker, a beloved family man on his way to see his great-grandchildren on Easter. He simply drove off into the Oregon landscape and was swallowed whole. The quiet horror of his story is the gaping void it left behind. No answers, no closure, just the unending, silent question of what happened on that highway. It's a deeply unsettling mystery, a stark reminder that sometimes people just vanish, leaving their loved ones to search for ghosts on an empty road. From a home filled with violence, to a cabin steeped in mystery, to an empty stretch of highway. 3 stories, forever linked by the holiday on which they occurred. They remind us that horror isn't confined to dark and stormy nights. It can arrive on a bright Easter morning, wearing the disguise of a family gathering or a simple road trip. It's in these disturbing crimes and chilling mysteries that we see the fragile line between celebration and tragedy. Thank you for joining me in exploring the darker side of the holiday. If these stories resonated with you, and if you appreciate this kind of deep dive into true, unsettling events, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. It helps us continue to bring you these compelling narratives. Stay safe, and remember to cherish the light, because you never know when a shadow might fall.